नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. In Sanskrit verses, whenever the word yatha is used, along with yatha there's usually the word tatha, just as, like. The idea is that when yatha and tatha are used, it is to show some comparison or bring out what we call similarities. In English we say simile, there's a way of comparing. So this is just as, and just as similarly. Now, the reason in philosophy or in life we give analogies because they're very powerful. Like in, if you hear a class, in classes you hear stories. A story itself may not have anything relevant to the particular philosophical topic, but stories help us come close to something that is otherwise not perceivable or understandable. One reason is because philosophy deals at a different level of consciousness, and for a common person to be able to dive right into that level is not easy. All we have when we begin is blunt senses and blunt mind, and definitely blunt intelligence. So how to explain something so far beyond our capacity in a way that we can say, yeah, I understand. The Srimad Bhagavatam verse in first canto, second chapter, text 6 says, Savai Pumsam Parodharma, the highest form of duty, Yatho Bhaktir Adhokshaje, is to offer all of one's mind and senses and intelligence in the service of a personality that cannot be seen, touched, smelled, heard, thought by the mind or grasped by the intelligence. And that's the only way to be suprasidati, happy. Like what? How is that possible? I can't touch someone, I can't hear them, I can't see them, I cannot grasp them in my mind, my intelligence cannot tell me, but I'm supposed to love that person with all my heart because that's the prime duty and that's the only way to become happy. Haribol. It's a formula for failure, one would think. Because Krishna is adhokshaja, beyond the range of the mind and senses. So how to? Similarly, because everything is connected to adhokshaja, the teachings, they are also beyond our ability to perceive. Atha Shri Krishna namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyer. Our blunt senses cannot appreciate, cannot come in contact with the name, form, qualities and pastimes of the Lord. But there is a way. Sevan mukhe hi javvadav. Sevan mukha means with a disposition of service. The one who has a disposition of service, they will come close to it. So these things, such as analogies and all of that, are used to allow us real life experiences to understand something that's beyond our life experience. They in and of themselves don't have the validity. No, but these are things that we can appreciate. Yatha analah darushu bhinna iyate. That you can see fire separate from the wood. He says, Yatha anilaha dehagata Pruthak stitaha. The air that goes through the nostrils, no one says this air is me, right? We breathe in, we breathe out, we don't think that we are that air. Yatha nabha sarvagata na sajjate. The air or the sky is all pervading, the sky everywhere. Space, ether or sky. There's space everywhere. At the universal level, there is space. At the microscopic level, there is space. There is space within a cell. There is space between two cells. Even within an atom, of course, no one's seen an atom, but technically speaking, there is a proton or the nucleus of an atom, and there are electrons, and between is space. Micron level space, but there's space. That's called sky or ether. He says sky is all pervading, na sajjate, but doesn't mix with anything else. The clouds are there in the sky, but the sky is not affected by the clouds. So we can see the differences. Na bhinna iyate. So it says tatha puman sarva gunashraya paraha. Tatha puman. So the living entity also, within this body, it is the source of this body, right? Without the soul, the body cannot manifest. It's only because at the time of conception, there is a soul, does the whole idea of generating, one cell breaking into another and then they mutating, and then slowly tissues and all the organs coming together, the whole body forming over the time of gestation to birth, is because of the presence of the soul. The moment the soul leaves, either before or even birth, if the soul leaves, the body starts degenerating. The whole of, this is my favorite time of the year. It's a little colder for me, but still, it's one of my favorite times, because you see new buds manifesting in trees, and new leaves showing up. In winter, all trees appear dead. No leaf, no sign of life. But you only know that there is a soul in that particular tree is because as soon as spring arrives, little leaves show up. And they grow so fast. You cannot imagine how fast it is. You look at the trees now, there are very little tiny tender green buds showing up. You give them a week and all leaves are manifest. So quickly, because there's soul. And without the soul, nothing grows. Nothing happens in the body if the soul is not present. Cannot breathe. Even the act of inhaling happens because the presence of the soul. The heart is beating because the soul is there. My father would sometimes ask someone, because he was also a philosopher, if you will. And sometimes he was a doctor, and so he would ask people, did the person die because the heart stopped, or did the heart stop because the person died? Right? And most persons will say, the person died because the heart stopped. They had a heart attack. They died because of a heart attack. It's the other way around. When the soul leaves, the heart stops. Because as long as the soul is there, the heart will beat. And when it's time for the soul to leave, the heart will not beat. The brain will not work. Of course, when the soul is also there, brain doesn't work. That's a whole different story, right? Somehow we find people like, your brain was not working. But it's the presence of the soul that that activates the organs, it grows the organs, it generates the organs. The liver is the only organ that can generate itself from nothing. If 95% of the liver is lost or cut out, there's only 5% or even 1%, it is said that the liver can grow back. It is the only organ that can regenerate itself. Yoo-hoo, so go ahead and drink, right? Because what if I lose my liver, so what? But without the presence of the soul, a full liver will not work. A fully healthy liver is not going to work. Yet, behind all of this, it's described that the living entity is totally separate, has got nothing in common with anything material. It is distinct. Tatha puman sarva gunashraya paraha. Para means separate or transcendental. It says transcendental to material contamination. The last word in the sloka. Para. The living entity is transcendental. He is within the body. Now, when we say within the body, it's very difficult to say where, because the soul doesn't have time and space dimensions to it. In the material world, everything can be defined by time and space. Where is the Mridanga? We can give coordinates there. Where is Chicago? The whole earth, you have longitudes and latitudes, and you can exactly pinpoint where it is. That's how GPS works, right? By longitude and latitude. And as you move, it tracks accordingly. So by time and space, you can tell everything, pretty much. But the soul is not confined by time and space. The body is. Therefore, we say birth and death. This is time dimension. Najayate mriyate va kadachin. The soul is neither born nor dies. So time does not apply to him. Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha. He doesn't have past, present or future. These are dimensions of time. These are features of time. So the soul has nothing to do with it. So neither space nor time apply to the soul. And how do we know? What else Krishna describes? So here we have fire, air and sky. And to allow us to understand this, Krishna beautifully describes in the Bhagavad Gita that was that Sanskrit verse is not destroyed by weapons, is not burnt by air, is not cut by weapons, is not burnt by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Right here. That all these elements have no impact on the soul. But do we feel it? Do we feel the impact of air, water, fire, sky? Yeah. Because there is simultaneous oneness and difference. This is very important to understand. We are distinct and different from matter. But we ourselves are energies of the Lord. So we are this energy, marginal. The material energy is considered to be the external energy. And both these energies have a source, Paramatma. And Krishna says, that's how Prabhupada starts. Krishna says, I am the source of both. Aham sarvasya prabhava matta sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajante mam. Buddha bhava samanvita. When one understands that Krishna is the source of both, he begins to worship Krishna in ecstatic mood. Because he sees everything connected to Krishna. So in that sense, he is simultaneous oneness and difference. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna particularly uses the word bhinna. In this verse also bhinna appears. 7.3, Krishna says, Bhumirapa nalo vayu khammano buddhire vacha ahankara ityamme bhinna prakriti rashtada. And Prabhupada quotes that verse. So, Krishna says these are separate from me. How do we understand that? Prabhupada explains that the sense of separateness, actually for Krishna, there's nothing called material energy and spiritual energy, because everything is his energy. Everything is spiritual. The sense of matter appears in the consciousness of the perceiver. So when he says bhinna, that means that the living entity sees all these things as not connected to Krishna. So they are considered separate. There are these kinds of explanations or terms used from the perspective of the living entity. For example, there's another one. Early in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is describing the nature of the soul, we have read multiple times the reference from Katha Upanishad, etc., and Shvetashvatara Upanishad, that the dimension of the soul is 1/10,000 the tip of hair. Right? Now, soul doesn't have dimension. It doesn't have time or space. Space means you can tell how big or small. A soul doesn't have a size. How can you say? It's 1/10,000 the tip of hair. So it's described by the Acharyas that it is from the perspective of the living entity. From our perspective, we see something so small. Oh, okay, I understand it. Actually, soul doesn't have dimension. And also it's a little bewildering that when Parikshit Maharaj was in the womb and Uttara the Pandavas were cursed by Ashwatthama by the release of Brahmastra, and Parikshit Maharaj's body was being burnt by the heat of the Brahmastra, it's described that Paramatma entered the womb and protected him. He's called Vishnu Rata. And it's described that the size of Paramatma was that of a thumb. Now, is Paramatma this size? But he's in every atom. Is it the size of the thumb of the atom or why? The size of a thumb is provided. If he's in every atom, you can't have this size of Paramatma. So size is implied only for our ability to say, oh, okay, who's small? So like that when he says bhinna, it means when we see something separate from Krishna, you'll see that it is material. You'll see it in a material way. And because we see things separate from Krishna, they fall within the category of earth, water, fire, air, ether, because anything else we cannot perceive. And what do? As soon as we see something separate from Krishna, what's the first thing the living entity does? He grabs it, exploits it, and enjoys it. This is why the material energy is created, to give us a sense of, hey, it's for our exploitation. Enjoy. Some Christian understanding is also like that. In fact, pretty much the entire Protestant idea is that God has made everything in this world for our enjoyment. And if you're a good Christian, then you get to enjoy more. And the better Christian you become, the more facility you have for enjoyment. This is called bhinna, a separated vision. If we see things separate from Krishna, we have the opportunity to exploit and enjoy. Correct? Yes. And what comes with that facility for enjoyment? You know? What's the associated emotion? Suffering is all right. Suffering, there's one particular thing that comes. When we see things separate from Krishna, we are given the facility or the thinking that we can enjoy and exploit it. That's true. But along with that facility for exploitation comes something that bothers the living entity. There's a particular affect. More than frustration. Huh? No. It's called fear. Because if you're exploiting something, you're afraid you'll lose it. Bhayam dvitiya abhivineshata syat. Ishvara tad viparyaya asmritihi. Anything. What is the source of fear according to this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam? Forgetfulness of Krishna. Not seeing Krishna. So as soon as we see things separate, fear also comes along with it. So exploitation and fear. And therefore people are constantly afraid that as they are enjoying, it will be lost. Bhayam. And you see the other side of consciousness. Those who see everything in connection with Krishna, they are fearless. This body that I think is so dear to me is mine, that I want to enjoy. I'm afraid it will die. I'm afraid of death. But those who are not, those who see things, this is Krishna's, everything is Krishna's, this is all material, they are not afraid of death in any way. Even if someone threatens them, we will kill you. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. Right? So as soon as the vision is, you see something distinct from Krishna, fear follows. And therefore Prabhupada taught us that we try to see everything as belonging to Krishna, and that's how we become abhaya, fearless. Because it's not mine to exploit anyway. So what's the fear? This body will go away. Right? No fear. All your possessions will go away. No fear. Fearless. Abhay Charanaravind. That's why there's no fear. Prabhupada is fearless. Krishna is, anyone who's with Krishna is fearless for that reason. Because they don't see things distinct from Krishna. They don't see something separated from Krishna. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, Krishna lists a whole set of qualities. And the first quality he says is Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi. It's in 13th chapter also. Abhayam, fearless. The way to become fearless is to transform our consciousness of seeing everything in relation to Krishna. The more we see, the less we are fearless. The less we are fearful. The less we are fearful. And I'll just tell you one or two things about fear that I was hearing this morning, and it's just interesting that somehow this has come up. So this devotee, his name is Rajvihari Prabhu, he was sharing that I forget the breakdown in terms of percentages, but he said so much percent of people's fears. What is the greatest source of fear?
What is the greatest source?
Source of fear in this world? No. The first is imagination. Yeah, most of our fears are imagined. They're not real. You've seen people, when they see a little cockroach, they're so afraid. And somehow, this person may be 150 pounds weight. The cockroach is perhaps 1 ounce. So in terms of just gross weight, that if you step on the guy, he's finished. But as soon as someone sees a cockroach, somehow they're afraid of that little guy. If a cockroach is still yucky, mosquito or something, or a mouse, afraid. First, the fear is imagined. That's like the largest percent. And then other things. And it's described that only 4% of all fears are real. So when we are with children or someone who's afraid, those who are in the field of counseling, they describe that the first business of the counselor is to what they call the right sizing, R-I-G-H-T. You right size your fear. Especially if people have fear of, say, swimming, water. So the trainer will right size the fear. Otherwise it is so big that a person will never enter water and swim. So it's called right sizing. When you right size it, it's not that fear goes away. There is a healthy fear. We should all have that, right? That comes later. That fear should be right sized. So 4% is the real one. Most of it is imaginary or imagined fear. He was giving the example of imagined fear. That apparently there was a man sitting under a tree. and he was busy, I think, reading something or whatever. He was sleeping, and so a snake bit him. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't see a snake. There was a little mouse running by. So he thought, mouse bite. It's not. He was not afraid. Mouse bite. What's the? He fell asleep again, and then a mouse, a mouse bit him, and the mouse ran away. But when he opened his eyes, he saw a snake slithering away. And he died. So what killed him? This is the question. What killed him? Is it the mouse or the snake? Neither. It's the fear that killed him. It's the fear that when he saw the snake, he assumed that the snake had bitten me. He assumed. Our fears are mostly from assumptions. We assume certain things. We imagine. Another example he gave was, he was quoting Sachinandan Maharaj, that apparently Sachinandan Maharaj's father was working for the German railways or something, and there was a story. There was a man who was filling up a particular car with freight, that's air conditioned, that's supposed to transport vegetables. And when you transport vegetables, you have to bring the temperature down. It gets very cold, so that heat will degenerate things. So then this man was inside, and by mistake someone closed the door and locked it. So he was knocking, but the person couldn't hear. So this person was locked inside. He was an engineer. He knew how the system works, that it is refrigerated, this car is refrigerated, and it's refrigerated to such a temperature that if there's a human being or any animal or any other being inside, that within 7 hours they will die. And so he knew, and then he was desperate, whatever, and about 12 hours later or 24 hours later or something, they opened the car because the train had moved. And the train hadn't moved or something, but the person, they found him dead. Okay? Now, they wondered what was wrong, and the vegetables were rotting or something, because there was no electricity. So the refrigeration was not working. But still the man died. You know why? It's fear, of course. But he had imagined that the refrigeration is working, it's cold, and he knew in 7 hours he will die, and he died. I think another example he gave was that they were the psychologists were making an experiment. There was a time in winter when Canada was coldest, negative 30. So they showed the movie called Lawrence of Arabia. It's about a desert. It's about a prince in the desert. The whole movie is shot in a desert where it's very hot. So when the audience was watching the movie and they had an intermission, they noted that the theaters in Canada, if you shout louder, locks open, right? So then the theaters in Canada saw the highest growth in sales of ice cream, because people were watching the screen. It was a desert scene, the characters are sweating, and they also felt it was very hot, they have to eat an ice cream. It's mostly imagined stuff. So bhayam dvitiya abhivineshatasyat means as soon as we see things or anything without the presence of Krishna, fear grips us, because we see things separate. So, our teaching is to learn to slowly and progressively see everything in connection to Krishna. And the more we do, the less we are fearful. And that's what is being... The reason this verse, I don't know what the reason for this verse, but the reason this whole train of thought is being provided, this is Yamraj speaking, right? Everyone's afraid of Yamraj. And Hiranyakashipu is quoting this whole thing about Yamraj is because the queens are afraid. How will we live our life without you? Oh, our dear king, how can we lose this body which is yours? And they cannot see the distinction that everything belongs to Krishna. And the soul is not the body. But it's the fear that makes us, that definitely makes us very attached to the body. Because the fear means I'm going to lose something. And you only lose something when you own something. It's this possession, which I talked about earlier in the week or last week. It's the sense of possession. I own this. I will lose this. But if Krishna owns everything, there's no loss for me. That's what we are asked to come up to progressively by our sadhana practices. Abhaya charanar bhajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya charanara vindare durlabha manava janama satsange tarahu ei bhava sindhure. This is how you cross over the ocean of material existence which holds you back by fear. So, any comments or questions? Jitendra Prabhu has something. You have a mic? You did not see the microphone. That's a cause of fear. Okay, go ahead. It's just the loss of anyone who's online. They will not hear the pearls of wisdom from you. We should. Prabhupada, I think, said the problem with you people is that you're not afraid enough of Maya.
Now, we have a material body that's subject to the dualities of material nature, hot, cold, happiness, distress.
Correct.
And let's say you want to go to the dentist, and the dentist kind of psychologically tries to ease the, because I mean, it is a painful experience having a material body.
Right.
So there is a real pain there.
Sure, because the soul absorbs.
I mean, like, if I'm on top of a building and I'm going to fall off, there's fear there because when I hit, it's going to be really painful, although it's instant. So we should have that's just a natural thing.
Correct.
Because the body is subject to a lot of,
trauma.
Yeah. And
The idea is not that fearless means foolish. Fearless, so I would say, this body is Krishna's, the car is earth, water, fire, air, ether mixed up, I don't need to wear a seat belt, I can walk on the street with my eyes closed. No, there's a healthy fear. Fear is necessary to preserve life. It's necessary because there's something to do with life. So we should have fear in that, but the right size of fear. It's not the blown away. And the problem is that in the material world, we underestimate the material energy, and so we are not sufficiently fearful. We underestimate it. But we see even big devotees. The whole Bhagavatam is full of examples, like super big devotees are blown away by Maya. So we say, I'm so afraid of Maya, I can't get up because I'm afraid, I can't leave the building because I'm afraid. So, Maya can grip us in the building.
So in one sense, I've heard the expression, our only happiness in the material world is mitigation of distress.
For the normal, for the common human being, yes.
Yeah, like when you're outside, it's cold, you want to get in where it's warm, so you get inside and you feel this sense of relief. It's not real happiness, but it's a sense of relief. You're hungry, you get some food, there's a sense of relief. So, like, there's no real happiness here, but it's just mitigation of distress.
I can't remember the poem, but this morning as I was hearing this, Prabhu was quoting another devotee. Vrajvihari Prabhu was quoting another devotee who used to tell him a poem. And let me see if I can't rhyme it, but he says, this is the common rule that the human being is a fool. When it's hot, he wants to be cool. And when it is cool, he wants it hot. Something. That's how we are. All of Winter, we needed it all heated up. And as soon as it heats up, we want it cool down.
So, distress is built into the material tabernacle.
Mm-hmm.
So we should, there is fear there, and it's real.
Yes.
But
that's the 4%.
Yeah.
There's the fears, real fears, only about 4% of them. Everything else is mostly imagined or big. They did some survey, and they said, then in America, what's the topmost fear in America?
Losing their house?
No.
Public speaking, I heard that before.
No. Who said public speaking? That's the number 2. The number 1 fear is the fear of flying.
Fear of flying?
Mm-hmm. Flying. To get on a plane. Although it's considered statistically the safest mode of transport, the number 1 fear is fear of flying. The second largest fear is the fear of public speaking. And third, death. They have their order a little messed up. But death is third. So they did a similar survey in India to find out what is the topmost fear in India. This was a long time ago. What was that fear? Losing one's mobile phone. I saw here, at least we put them in our pocket. In India, people have their phones always in their hands. True? It's always in people's hands. I know it removes your sense of dexterity. It's like anything. It limits you, but it's always there. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Jai Baldev. Oh, Deendayal Prabhu, you have something to say?
I want to ask something, Prabhu.
Oh, okay.
Prabhu, Hiranyakashipu is saying so much of philosophy about soul and life, etc.
Yeah.
Why he doesn't know that his brother is killed and he also will be killed by the Lord?
Yeah.
Lord is always great. Why he doesn't know and he wants to fight against the Lord?
Yeah, because he's what we called Vacharya. Vacharya means he only speaks philosophy, cannot live it. And it is only applicable to others, not to oneself. It's called hypocrite. So he's trying to tell others, don't be afraid, don't be angry, like that. He himself is very angry that Hiranyaksha is killed. After this, he will speak the opposite philosophy. He's speaking, providence is such, the soul is separate from all the material elements, but I will kill Vishnu. So great philosophy, but for others, not for myself. He's a hypocrite. Jai Baldev.
Hare Krishna. Thanks for a wonderful class. This is a joke you made a while ago in reference to this whole class. One I never forgot because it's very funny. You basically said there are 2 people who are fearless.
Yeah.
Padamahamsas and Padamakamsas.
Yeah. I don't know.
So those who are foolish, and so only those in between kind of suffer, the effects. So this brings up to mind one thing one devotee mentioned. I'll mention after who it was, but something I really appreciated. Basically, he said if you had to choose between Vishnu's weapons, like a conch, flower, disc, and club. I think. Yeah, which one would you choose? And most people would be like, definitely not the flower. But he made the point that actually the flower is the main one, which kind of represents our, our sincerity, our humility, etc. And like sometimes we try to slash people's conception with our Shudanshan chakra or beat them over the head with the philosophy or blow their ears out 24 hours a day. And so I really appreciate that. Vaishnava Sevananda actually mentioned that point. And we could see in the lives of Prabhupada and like Bhaktisiddhanta, they were fearless. They would, go into like, let's say, defeat people. They would definitely use their clubs, whatever, all the weapons. But at the same time, it's not that they neglected the flower. They always brought the flower in. And this brings to mind something Bhaktisiddhanta said. He said, I wish nothing, words of wisdom on bvml.com. It has all the acharyas. And one thing that Bhaktisiddhanta said in some sutras he wrote called Words of Wisdom, he said, I wish nothing but the best for my worst enemies. So he's always bringing his flower along. Like usually it's somebody, you know. So can you explain that? How do we not kind of imitate, you know, the fearlessness? Because it's kind of foolish of us, you know, just like about the Jordan. We all had this experience. Like he criticized his dad for being a meat eater. He was, you know, said something to his dad like, you know, I'll come and visit you once you, you know, stop eating meat or something like that, stuff like that. And we've all had that experience that we become fearless. We see like Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta, but we may not have the patience and the humility yet. And maybe you could expand on that point a little bit.
The line between arrogance and fearlessness is a little fine. We see in the lives of Prahlad Maharaj, Haridas Thakur, that they were fearless, but they were never arrogant. They were never cruel to anyone. When Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad, where are you getting all this strength from? His answer was, "Oh, best of the demons. Oh, Asura Varya." He said, "Asura Varya, best of the demons." And his father felt very happy. He did not say, "What, you call me a demon?" Because he said it with such affection and respect that his father never felt threatened by him and his words. Or when Haridas Thakur was challenged, he was fearless when he said, even the glimpse of the holy name can give liberation. Gopal Chakravarti became very angry. But Haridas Thakur was not disrespectful to him, saying, "What, I'm Namacharya, I'm fearless, like whatever I say is right." And he just didn't have that in his consciousness. So fearlessness and being arrogant are two different things. And being a little immature is a whole different thing as well. Even immature people are fearless. Children are very fearless. If you take a baby, they're fearless. But you can't say that they're intellectual. A child will crawl on the street totally oblivious of a big truck or a car on the street. You can't say, "My fearless baby." No. So, fearlessness exists in the not intelligent and the intelligent. But what distinguishes is knowledge. And a person who has proper knowledge, they're fearless because they're humble. Vidya, that verse, that frame there with the picture, there's a very important key word in that. Vidya, and the next one is Vinaya. What does Vinaya mean? Gentle. Just because one has knowledge, it doesn't make a person arrogant. In fact, knowledge is supposed to make a person gentle. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. One who's endowed with quality of knowledge that is expressed as gentleness. Such a person sees oneness in all living entities. So if our knowledge is making us arrogant, of course, now arrogance is a perceived thing. If a person says something gently to someone, they may still see it as arrogance. That's because there is arrogance in us. We see arrogance from others. So Vidya Vinaya. So when Bhaktisiddhanta or persons, Ramanujacharya said something like that, they don't see arrogance because they themselves are not. So even the worst enemy can say something, they'll say, "Oh, they remind me of Krishna." That's fine. They're telling me, they're helping me. They're not afraid. Anyway, so it's Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini. That Vinaya is something is usually forgotten. We say Vidya, I have Vidya, and therefore I can use Shastra as Shastra.
What does Vinaya mean?
Vinaya means gentle or humble. Shastra means the weapon of knowledge, and Shastra means a physical weapon. And most of us don't know the distinction between the two. We use Shastra, the heavier the book, the heavier the, hit on people's head with it. Prabhupada said, BAM! Shastra and Shastra. Okay. Anything else? Ladies' side? Stira?
Is it knowledge that takes one from the imagined fear to the real fear?
Yeah. But knowledge not in and of itself, knowledge of Krishna, basically. Of course, even basic knowledge about worldly things, helps a person go beyond their fears. But the real fear is the fear of seeing things, fear that comes from seeing things separate from Krishna. So we need knowledge for that. Therefore, Prabhupada wrote all these books, studying the Bhagavatam. Knowledge, don't think of them as, generally, this is I don't know if that's how you're thinking, but in general, somehow when you say knowledge for a devotee, it's like, oh, I'm a bhakta, I don't want knowledge. Why not? It means knowledge within the realm of bhakti. But knowledge, knowledge removes fear. That is why knowledge is provided. So you make a person knowledgeable about something and they'll fear less, or their fear reduces. So it's important to have knowledge. But where does knowledge come from? It comes from bhakti. So in that, so seeing things in relation to Krishna is an element of knowledge, and therefore Krishna describes it in 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is an essential devotional knowledge. It's called Vedanta, that I am the source of everything. Everything comes from me. Iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. Listen, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam. He's saying, no, Rajavidya is the king of all knowledge. Pavitram idam uttamam. It was purifying and it's transcendental. So knowledge is necessary. Yes. It removes fear. Final comment.
Prabhupada said we should see through the eyes of
Correct.
They said, Prabhupada, why didn't you come to America earlier? And he says, well, I didn't want to present myself as a fool, so I had to learn these things. So he didn't have fear of public speaking, whereas somebody like myself would be stumped on some questions, of course, so knowledge is a good thing. I mean,
I was taught to speak in public, not that I've learnt it, one of the things we were told is you should imagine your audience sitting naked or standing naked. Then it removes your fear. Then you can laugh at them. I was doing a presentation with a big crowd. I think there were 100 people in the room, and I'd said, this is what I was taught about public speaking, but I want you to know that's not what I'm thinking about you. It says it removes fear. I don't know if it does, but it is definitely very daunting to stand in front of a crowd and they're all looking at you.
Prabhupada said, you think you're learning by my speaking, but I'm also learning by your hearing. So it's like a reciprocal thing.
Prabhupada's humble. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanande. Is Himanshu in town? Or is he gone to Indiana?
Himanshu is asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to go to surgery.
They're going to be back Saturday. Himanshu Surge. Should be back Saturday.
Saturday.
I heard Saturday night.